Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Ackworth Amy and Amy P. and Marla and Craig. Good to have y'all today. Announcements today. The 9 p.m. Eastern meeting, AA meeting. You can get there, Zoom, aameetings.com. We will be every night during the holidays. We also have a ton of resources at transitionsdaily.org. If you need any resources, including some different apps, different meetings, 24-hour meetings, lists of recovery resources to stay sober any time of the year, including the holidays. I chair on Fridays. Ackworth Amy, she chairs on Sundays. And then we have on Friday night a beginner breakout, which is really good, going through the book Living Sober, and Amy chairs that as well. So lots of good stuff. Any other announcements, Greg? You want to talk about the Facebook group for a moment?
Yep, you can join the Facebook page. It's the Tao of Our Understanding Facebook page. It's the exact same logo as what's on the podcast. This week we had Betty, Baron, Mark, and Kelly joined us. So welcome. It's good to have you on board. When you join the group, we'll post a link to the meeting. So if you're interested, you can actually join in the meeting as well. You can turn up, you can contribute, or you can turn up and just keep the camera off or join in. So please join us.
Yeah, and then in the Facebook group, we also talk about some of these things, and we got a place we can post related material and articles and things if we wanted to keep the discussion going during the week. So good stuff, good stuff. Our story today, The Tower of the Spirit. This is from Thomas Merton's translation of Chuang-Tzu's writing, and he was a student of Lao Tzu. But several hundred, 250, 300 years later, I think. So he didn't actually know Lao Tzu, but he was a later student. So we've had some very good stories here. Marla, you want to read for us?
The Tower of the Spirit. The Spirit has an impregnable tower, which no danger can disturb, as long as the tower is guarded by the invisible protector, who acts unconsciously and whose actions go astray when they become deliberate, reflexive, and intentional. The unconsciousness and entire sincerity of Tao are disturbed by any effort at self-conscious demonstration. All such demonstrations are lies. When one displays himself in this ambiguous way, the world outside storms in and imprisons him. He is no longer protected by the sincerity of the Tao. Each new act is a new failure. If his acts are done in public, in broad daylight, he will be punished by men. If they are done in private and in secret, they will be punished by spirits. Let each one understand the meaning of sincerity and guard against display. He will be at peace with men and spirits and will act rightly, unseen, in his own solitude, in the tower of his own spirit.
Thank you, Marla. Any comments, guys? Okay, the Spirit has an impregnable tower which no danger can disturb, as long as the tower is guarded by the invisible protector who acts unconsciously and whose actions go astray when they become deliberate, reflexive, and intentional. I was thinking this was talking about the Spirit being our inner self, and that this invisible protector being our God consciousness, or whatever way you want to look at that. Maybe. This is my thinking. Y'all tell me what y'all thought with this. And that acts unconsciously. That's the effortless effort. But my actions go astray, or my protection of my spirit goes astray when my actions become deliberate and reflexive and intentional. I was thinking defensive, selfish, dishonest, resentful, very much like fear, page 84 in the big book.
Mm-hmm.
I know, Amy P., I know you're coming from a Al-Anon perspective with this. So, and anything from your Buddhist background, anything that you think would add to this, please just interject. So,
I was thinking about the impregnable tower, which no danger can disturb. As I'm getting better at this spiritual recovery thing, my base is getting stronger and less things bother me. I don't know if that's true. I might be lying to myself, but it's that base, that you build a house from. It's like you have to have a base, a strong foundation to build everything up from, that tower. And I thought the same about the invisible protector. That's the Tao. It's invisible and it's unconscious, and etc.
Thank you. I'm there with you. I think that as we learn just not to be disturbed, not to allow, we learn that our suffering doesn't come from the outside in. Our suffering is all outward. There's no outside circumstances. I think we've been talking about this off and on. No outside circumstances that must disturb us. Every time we're disturbed, it's because we're not accepting. It's an outward action.
I would actually disagree with that, but it would take us down a rabbit hole that I don't know if we want to go down.
We like rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's have at it. Yes, please.
Yes.
I would say if I am not disturbed by anything externally, then do I believe in evil? Because ultimately there are lots of things in this world that if I am not disturbed by, I would think that I might have something wrong with me. And so that's just a little bit of a juxtaposition of like, it doesn't mean I have to be upset necessarily. But what I would say is like in a very practical example, which doesn't come from, and I'm so sorry, I've got dogs in the background. This is horrible for a podcast recording. So
it's okay.
Sorry, no, it's all right. I can't control them. Anyway, so at least not while I'm sitting here. So this is coming from psychological. So I have psychological, Buddhist, and Al-Anon perspective. So from a psychological perspective, if I am not disturbed by someone abusing me, if I'm not physically and emotionally and psychologically disturbed by someone abusing me, then one might argue that I am conditioned to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's not about everything on the outside I don't have to be disturbed by. It's in what circumstance do I need to be disturbed? Do I really need to be disturbed? Because ultimately, in some cases, I would argue you do need to be disturbed. So anyway, that's all.
No, that's a good perspective.
Yeah, for me, lack of disturbance does not equate to approval or something that I feel is appropriate or that I'm going to condone or tolerate. What it means for me is that I can take care of uncomfortable situations or things that I don't approve of without me getting angry, like overly, like me acting out and being in fear and all the things that where I lose my peace. I can take now, if it's something like abuse situation is not my experience. I don't deal with that. So I haven't had to accept something of that magnitude. But things I've had to accept that have been major things that are unacceptable, I've been able to accept unacceptable situations. And what disturbance I had, learn how to let that, all my acceptance of unacceptable situations came from within, not from changing my circumstances. Just changing the circumstances did not give me peace. I had to do that. Came from an inner work for me to do that, if that makes sense.
Complete.
It makes sense. I just don't think it applies to the example I gave. I believe that in situations where we are in unacceptable situations, there may be times where we absolutely need to be filled with whatever fuel we need to be out of that situation.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you have to be totally out of control to do that. I mean, you can
say it takes what it takes.
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't rule anything out. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't rule anything out.
But see, that's what's your experience with that, though? See, that's my experience is that any situation that I have, that my peace with that comes from within. It doesn't come from without here. So if we stick to talking about what our experience is, rather than situations that don't apply, that might be a good place to start. So, but I know I got to be, if I had a situation like that, that's unacceptable. But that doesn't mean that changing that situation is going to give me peace. Granted, it needs to change, but I would still have inner work to do to get to a place of peace with that.
Yes, and it might involve actually getting enraged. That might be part of the process.
But the difference, Amy, is the Tao is not a psychological. We're not studying it from a psychological point of view. It's more of a spiritual point of view, and so
which is why I said maybe we shouldn't go down this rabbit hole. So I'm fine with us shifting.
I love hearing the other side of it. The Tao is a little different than the Buddhist in that the Tao takes your ego completely out of it. So we're talking about having a balance, a spiritual balance.
Craig, what do you have, sir?
I think the spiritual balance I think it really depends on how we react to things. Are we going to react to things or are we going to respond to things? And I think there are certain situations where we do need to react rather than just respond to things. And I think what Amy was talking about is incredibly valid because it is an automatic, it's an ingrained instinct for the fight or flight part of the human being. I think there's some things that we can't control, some reactions that we can't control because it's inbuilt in a survival mechanism that we have to react in some ways. So I completely see where Amy's coming from. So thanks for raising that, Amy. I was looking at the spirit. The spirit has an impregnable tower. I switched the words around, and I was kind of looking at that from a sobriety point of view. My sobriety has an impregnable tower. Which no danger can disturb as long as the tower is guarded by that invisible protector. And I was seeing that invisible protector as me just doing the next right thing and not getting involved in things that don't concern me and reacting rather than responding to things. That's normally when I see a disturbance. I usually find when I'm reacting, then I'm trying to get involved in things that I'm not qualified to get involved in. And sometimes a response from myself is just to say, yeah, that's fine, and walk away from situations rather than getting involved in things that I'm not really qualified to deal with. And I think the main word in there is for myself is intentional. What's my intentions behind the way that I'm reacting or the way that I'm responding to things? Is it for personal gain or is it for helping others? I usually find that I'm spiritually more fit when I'm helping others than when I'm trying to gain from people.
Yeah, I was focusing on the reflexive part of that, the defense. And there's a Course in Miracles quote that I like that if I defend, I'm inviting attack. And if I'm defending myself, I really need to look at why I'm defending. What's behind that? Is there something I'm trying to get my way about that I should just be letting go? What's the whole point of?
Am I trying to hide something?
exactly? Or am I acting out of fear too? Fear could be part of that. That's where I was going with because it's interesting how the invisible protector unconsciously is doing this, is defending. I mean, is unconsciously guarding. But then the problems come when I start being reflexive. When I have an agenda, all those things. And then the second verse, the second section says, the consciousness and entire sincerity of the Tao are disturbed by any effort at self-conscious demonstration. All such demonstrations are lies.
Can we just say selfie next to this verse?
Okay.
There's no sincerity in taking selfies. There isn't.
We had a frowny face from Ackworth.
Yeah, because every time I see my grandbaby, I absolutely take a selfie. I don't participate in social media of any kind.
That's different. It's a
Okay.
But if you're a teenager and you're like at some fancy nightclub, like you're taking fancy pictures of yourself in the bathroom and snorting up coke, and that's
that escalated quick.
a self-conscious demonstration, which is a big lie.
Well, that goes back to the.
Just asking the name of the nightclub.
What? What'd you say, Craig?
I was just asking for the name of the nightclub.
Oh, right. It's the one that you frequent.
It's in Detroit. You wouldn't like it.
But I think that comes back to the external, right? That absolutely comes back to as long as I look good on the outside, as long as I look and cool, feel cool on the outside, right?
Self-conscious demonstration. All such demonstrations are lies. For some reason, that reminded me of and I looked it up, the line in verse 46 from Stephen Mitchell: there's no greater illusion than fear, no greater wrong than preparing to defend yourself, no greater misfortune than having an enemy. Whoever can see through all fear will always be safe. And then I think another translation of that same one is that hope and fear are both illusions. And I always wondered why hope would be an illusion too. And I think it's because in some regard, hope is taking us out of the moment as well, just into the future, not the past. So that we're wishing things are different, it takes us out of acceptance, takes us out of the moment, where our actions become deliberate, don't they? Yeah.
I was thinking the 77th verse. The last part of the Stephen Mitchell translation says, the master can keep giving because there is no end to her wealth. She acts without expectation, succeeds without taking credit, and doesn't think she's better than anyone else. There's no expectations, then surely we've nothing to gain.
How about this one? This is 67, Ron Hogan. If you want to get ahead, show people compassion. When other people attack you, defend yourself with compassion. It's the most powerful force in the universe. When one displays himself in this ambiguous way, the world outside storms in and imprisons him.
I'm thinking about Scrooge.
Yeah.
Because he was imprisoned in his own world. And the next verse too, I was thinking about Scrooge. He will be punished by men, and he will be punished by spirits, because he was a big dick.
It's interesting how you don't imprison, the world storms in and imprisons him. It's like the anti-effortless effort. And I was thinking about this. When I drank all the time, I really didn't have to work at being drunk other than to drink, right? I mean, it was like once I drank, The rest of it took care of itself. I didn't work super hard at that, right? I just drank and it all happened for me. Okay. And in the same way, this is saying that when we start down this road of self-conscious demonstration, fear, I would say this is fear too, that the world outside storms in and imprisons him. So it's like an automatic thing that happens.
Well, it said, prior to recovery, when I was immature, I created stories in my head about things people said to me and why they said them, and then created a story about myself. And none of it was true. I'm not sure why I was why I was thinking about that. It's just delving into the fantasy world and the world that we create based on our own karma. How do we clean that karma?
I think we stopped listening to that voice. We stopped listening to it. We stopped listening to the thoughts. We have three conversations. There's a conversation that I think I'm going to have. There's a conversation that I actually have. And then there's a conversation that I think to myself, I should have had this conversation. And I'm sitting having that internal dialogue with myself all day, every day. Yes.
You create this and none of it ever happens.
I think we just surrender to that voice. We acknowledge it and surrender to it. Michael Singer, who'd done the surrender experiment in the Untethered Soul, he spent years and years just developing a technique where he just does the absolute opposite of what the voice tells him. If somebody comes to him and he doesn't want to do something for somebody, then his automatic reaction is, yeah, let's do it.
He didn't live by instinct. He lived by anti-instinct.
No, I think we intuitively know the next right thing to do.
But you said he was going against what he thought was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean.
He just did that at first, right, Craig? He started noticing that, and then it all.
Yeah, and then what progressed from there was his intuition took over, and he was just basically doing the next right thing for everybody else, and he gained from a life of service. And all he done was, not listen to that voice that we're talking about.
I was thinking about how I'm at the 9th step promises and how many of these came true for me when I was drinking, what alcohol did for me, right? Going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Yes. Not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Yeah, when I drank, I did not regret the past at all. This happened for a short period of time while I was drinking, and I chased that after that, right? We'll comprehend the word serenity and no peace. If we're down the scale, no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. Oh, this one's a big one. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. This is the one you're talking about, Craig, I think. We'll intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And it's interesting how, alcohol did that for me for a while, but it wouldn't, do it all the time. It was about the first, 20 minutes to hour of every drunk. And then after that, I was just chasing that feeling again, right? Every new act is a new failure.
Hang on, buddy. One second. One moment. The part when one displays himself in this ambiguous way, the world outside storms in and imprisons him. Whatever our protestations are, not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So because of our actions and our self-consciousness, our selfishness, that is the reason that I was imprisoned when I was active in my disease.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't your family really worried about you, or your husband really worried about you when you were drinking, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like I was talking to another woman about that, how worried her husband was about her all the time, and what he went through. The things that we put our family through due to our selfishness, that's something I can't get over really myself. It's a selfish disease, but.
Yeah, when one displays himself in this ambiguous way, the world outside storms in and imprisons him. That's exactly what you were talking about, him. That was exactly it.
Such inner turmoil. We don't have to have that.
And if we want to flip it on its head from the Al-Anon perspective, we would say sort of the opposite. We would say, my constant focus on the other, which is its own disease. That also is imprisoning.
Is that like the codependent that they use now? Well, I hate that word only because if anything, this pandemic has taught us is we are codependent on each other as a society, as a world, as humans. So I think, anyways, you can edit that out, buddy.
Well, I would say here's the nuance. Here's the nuance. Codependence means that I would lose my own identity and sense of self when I further involve myself with others. And I would say the pandemic, hopefully for those of us that are open and willing, is that it creates interdependence, right? Where I can allow you to be you and me to be me, and I don't have to lose any part of who I am.
That's a much better definition. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
It's okay. It's an easy one to, I think, get mixed up because codependent actually does on the surface sound okay. Like if you didn't know anything about recovery or anything, you would think, oh, codependent, well, it doesn't sound that horrible, but then actually no. But yeah.
I see your point.
Thank you. Anything else, guys, from before we move to the second page? If his acts are done in public in broad daylight, he will be punished by men. If they're done in private and in secret, they will be punished by spirits. In other words, you're not going to get away with it, right?
Either way, you're not.
Either way, right? I think that's pretty simple. I don't have any notes by that.
Well, that's what I mean by Scrooge. Scrooge was visited by the spirits and not treated well.
The misery is going to what?
Sorry, I thought we're only as sick as our secrets. When I was talking about that part, you'll be punished by your spirit. You know that you've done wrong.
Unless you're a psychopath, Craig.
Yeah. That's the jury's still out on that one. But what I'm thinking about there is that when we're doing a 10th step, when I know that I've done something wrong, I know that I have that amends to make. I know that I have to recognize the emotion, recognize the fear, pray about it, talk to my sponsor about it, talk to somebody about it. And if there's any amends to get made, then I have to make them there and then. Otherwise, at some point, it's going to stop playing on me. And I'm then going to think to myself, do you know what? I managed to get away with it that once. Let's see what happens if I get away with it another time and then another time. And then from there on, it just snowballs and escalates. And then before I know it, I'm back to the old behaviors that I used to be doing. And a lot of it wasn't about drinking. A lot of it was about being deceitful. A lot of it was about lying, cheating, stealing, all the sort of things that we don't think we've really done until you sit down with your sponsor and he says, have you ever stole anything out your house? You're like, well, no, because it was mine. Have you ever taken anything that your wife didn't know about? I was like, well, yeah, okay, right. So you're a thief. Right, okay, right. Is there anything you didn't tell her about? No, I was always honest. Really? Oh, yeah, so you're lying straight away. So it's really recognizing those behaviors. And if I don't act on it there and then, then I'm very quickly going to regress back to the ass that I used to be. That's where I see that line, you get punished by the spirit.
Okay, Craig, any other comments, guys?
I was just going to offer once again the Al-Anon perspective here, which is, and it's, I mean, I would say AA too. Well, you guys could tell me, I suppose, that if we are only as sick as our secrets and we're caught in some level of deceit, that ultimately we're just betraying ourselves. It's all a form of self-betrayal, right? And so realizing first that, yes, I probably have betrayed other people, but first and foremost, I've betrayed myself.
Totally.
Doesn't it say on our medallions to thine own self be true?
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think so. To thine own self be true and self-betrayal. There are those two who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Echoing. I think we're on, yeah. There are those that suffer from grave and emotional mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest, right? There's no coincidence. Nothing happens in God's world by mistake. That there is someone on this podcast today with an Al-Anon perspective. I too have a bit of Al-Anon, and I can tell you that this week for sure, this perspective has helped me more than anything else. I've been working with someone. Sponsoring someone for quite some time, several years. And the web of lies and deceit have come out more so recently. And I'm just thinking of the flip side of this, what we just read, that the acts done in public, punished by men, and those done in private, punished by spirits. Well, in this case, I think the acts were done in private until the disease was there, right? But until it became too much, and then all of a sudden the private became public, and more people started to pick up on, she's using again. Oh, I wonder, is it my imagination, or are these really old behaviors? What's going on? And then the betrayal part. It's been interesting, challenging. I'll just say it. It's been very challenging for me to step back and not focus on the betrayal that I feel, because I trusted this person, right? And I believed her, and I know there's a solution. But we were talking about expectations, I think, at the beginning, right? And so my Al-Anon meeting on Monday night said, why do we expect someone to behave any differently? I've heard that how many times? And a light bulb came on, and I was like, holy shit. I was expecting her not to act as a drug addict would act. What? So I think going back to the beginning of the conversation, it's a spiritual axiom: when I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me, right? From that perspective only, what was wrong with me, I did not resume my active disease. She did. I'm sober. She's not. But what my part was, I expected her to behave differently than a drug addict would behave. I'm absolutely feeling betrayed. I'm absolutely feeling enraged. I'm glad you used that word earlier, right? She didn't do this to me, but I felt like it for a moment, right? I'm really grateful that I don't have to suffer that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I'm grateful that mine's just surface level, that I just have to deal with the embarrassment, and the ego deflation and all of those things, right? Anyway, thanks for letting me just vent that out and get it out, because that's all I could think about with this reading was just my immediate experience with being punished by spirits. And thank God it's not me today.
I mean, it's good, Amy, that you can see your part in that too, because at least you can learn from her relapse, and not have to relapse yourself to learn those lessons.
I mean, that's always what I say when somebody comes back in. I'm like, oh, thank God you didn't die. Oh, I'm so grateful it's not me. Thank you for going out so I don't have to. I mean, I know that sounds awful, but I don't wish this on anybody. But yeah, grateful it's not me.
I thought what was funny was a lot of your angst came from your embarrassment that your sponsee went out. That's
well,
funny.
Of course, because don't you know who I am? I'm Ackworth Amy. I am the best sponsor in the world. What?
Nothing.
That's my ego.
Nothing could make me not drink if I wanted to.
You should you should really lower your expectations. I expect all my guys to go out and drink. That way I'm pleasantly surprised every time I log in and meet them and like, I'm still sober. I'm like, yes, get in there. Look what I've done.
Well, I think that I needed to hear that, Craig. Honestly, I actually needed to hear something Craig had to say today. Thanks. That was good.
Hey, Marla, you're right. If you want to drink, there's nothing that can stop you. But by the same token, if you don't, there's nothing that can make you. Hey, Craig, show us your sweater. Or jumper, I'm sorry. It's a jumper in Scotland.
It's a jumper. Don't start this debate again. It's a jumper.
Okay, show us.
See your ugly sweater.
And this is another good plug for the Facebook page, because if you join the Facebook page, you can actually see my jumper. It's actually Yoda, and he's saying, "Very good, I have been."
Amy P. He has like, how many jumpers you started, or sometime in December, and have like a different one for every day, don't you?
I think I started in June.
Let each one understand the meaning of sincerity and guard against display. And guard against not only display, but all those things at first, too, I would think. Deliberate, reflexive, and intentional actions, selfish actions, or fearful actions, defensive actions. I would think that would include all of that. He will be at peace with men and spirits and will act rightly, unseen, in his own solitude in the tower of his spirit. I see some humility there.
Kind of sounds like the meek shall inherit the earth.
Oh, and we will.
The meek aren't supposed to care whether they inherit the earth or not, and they already have it. Know it. See, that's the thing.
So when your insides match your outsides, then you will be at peace.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Gandhi said. Be the person you wish to be. What did he say? Be the change you wish to. Forget it. I forgot.
Obama said that.
No, be the change you wish to see in the world. That was Gandhi, I think. But we can attribute it to Obama if you'd like, because he did win the Nobel Peace Prize.
And he deserved it too.
Very, very well deserved. Yep.
It was well deserved.
We're not going to go. I got to delete this part out because I know I don't do no politics on it.
I was about to say we have no opinion on outside issues, but
you can say what. Yeah, you're right, Amy. You're right. I try to leave that out.
Buddy's towers just crumbled.
My tower. What happened? What happened? I had an intentional act, I guess. I was defensive.
You were reflexive.
If anybody sees Buddy's serenity, tell him he wants it back.
Yeah. And now I got to pray for Obama a little bit.
Oh, he's doing just fine without your prayers. Thank you very much.
No, it's me that's not doing fine, Marlo. That's why I got to pray. It's not to help him. It's to help me. It doesn't help him. It just helps me. Anything else with this, guys?
Well, one thing, and I'm going to get it wrong because God knows I'm just going to say it right now. I am rusty when it comes to recovery literature and where I found it and who said it. So forgive me. But I believe there is something in the traditions. Sure. We're going to go with that. Something in the traditions that goes along the lines of like guarding against something related to display. I'm butchering it, but like something in the recovery literature that kind of talks a little bit about this theme in sort of display. Can anybody, and maybe we're talking
attraction rather than promotion.
Yeah.
Okay. And anonymity. Yeah, both.
Yeah. Okay. So attraction rather than promotion. So one of the things that has been rolling through my mind this entire time when we're talking about this idea of display and not display, or, doing things in the solitude, is like where there is no line. Sorry, dog toys. There is no line, but to me, like where it's a gradient, right? So like where in this gradient of display and solitude do I feel comfortable? And by comfortable, I mean, where do I know that my ego is more or less in a place where it's not running the show? Does that make sense? Right? Attraction rather than...
If you can answer that, you've just solved the world's problems. Thank you so much. You just solved humanity's problems.
Yeah, it's an unanswerable, right? But like ultimately, that's the question I guess we all have to answer for ourselves, right? And being able to work with people, whether it's, my sponsor, other people, other supportive people who are reflecting back to me in some way, shape, or form, kind of where I'm at. Because I would say for myself, this is not something that I see in myself very well. I have to have other people in my life to reflect that back to me of where I'm at on that gradient, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see it. My grandmother would say backwards. We see it behind us. We realize God's doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. That I think that's what that's talking about. I always see it after my behavior. So my behavior's changed. Why did I behave like that instead of the way I used to? Anyone have any suggestions or how they're starting to see? For me, it's about me setting the intention that I want to walk in love. The intention that, because if I'm coming from a place, I've got a sponsee who tells me that, I can just make up and do nice things for people and, instead of loving them, and I could get all confused. I said, listen, stop thinking. First of all, I said, if you're doing something from a place of love, I said, if you're doing it for selfish motive, you won't be doing that very long. Because when you don't get the credit you think you deserve, you'll speak up. You'll see that, that's not working. So for me, the way that I move in that direction of egolessness that you're talking about, Amy, is by setting the intention with an open heart that I want to walk in love today in my actions toward others. And it's always toward others. It doesn't matter what I believe in God or not or whatever. I see that happens when I'm interacting with other people. It doesn't happen for me, just me by myself. I have to have other people involved for that to happen. But that's where it comes for me. That's the whole idea. For me is setting the intention to walk in love, to serve today. And things pop up all the time for me to do service-wise or kind act, if you want to go with walk in kindness, ever how you want to say it. But I have those decisions to make all the time. Craig?
Yeah, I'm very similar in that vein. I think it's living the example that I want to set for people that I'm accountable to. I have my sponsees, I have my family, I have my son. when it comes to the sponsees, they came to me because I have something they want. And it would be very egotistical for me to sit and say, well, yeah, just stick with me and you'll be as sober as I am. I still have to work the steps. I have to work my program. I have to be accountable to my sponsor. I have to be accountable to everybody at this meeting, everybody else I'm interacting with. I cannot let that ego take over, because again, when it does that, I'm going to regress very, very quickly back to the old behaviours. And first of all, I don't want it. I don't want that. But then, I have a responsibility for other people as well. And I know they're responsible for their own sobriety. But again, there's that interdependency that you spoke about earlier on, Amy. I have that responsibility for other people. It doesn't mean to say that I'm not taking everybody else's sobriety on board. That's their responsibility.
So interesting that Craig said earlier that he just expects everybody to go back out, and then is like, surprising yay when they don't. Because with respect to the ego and like what's ego, and I, for me, assume for myself that everything that I do is because of me, because of me and what's in it for me. And so, like Buddy was talking about, like I run everything by my sponsor because I can manipulate a good idea in my head and make myself think that it's a God idea. And I got here with bright ideas. So everything for me has to come back to what are my motives, and are my motives self-seeking? And I don't know, because I did that for a long time, more than 22, 23 years. Everything was about what's in it for me, and everything was me. And so my first reaction to anything that I do is it's based on self. Now, the more that I work, the more that I work on that, maybe, I don't know, still some days I can convince myself that I'm doing, my motives are pure when they're not. I mean, I'm hiding a bad motive underneath a good one. And it takes my sponsor to say, hey, look at it from this perspective.
Yeah, but Amy, what happens is the light shines on it and you see it eventually. You're not going to get away with that very long,
Right. I don't like the way it feels.
Exactly.
I was going to add, for what I do is I try. One of the most important things somebody said at a meeting that I heard was, you are not the family, you are part of the family. And that kind of right-sized me a little bit. So I like, what I really try to do with everything is step back and look at it from a bigger point of view. But again, I'm like you, Ackworth Amy, totally dishonest with myself most of the time. I need people to write me.
Aren't sponsors really annoying?
What's annoying?
Sponsors, they're really annoying, aren't they?
I don't have one. I don't have sponsors. I just look to you guys. You guys are my sponsors.
Greg doesn't have to have one either if he doesn't want one.
I always found out like I knew more than they did. So
this is
breaking up with you, buddy.
Do what?
He's thinking of breaking up with you.
Amy,
I think I've just been done.
Greg's a sponsor of mine, so that's why I can say that. Well, if he wants to, he can. I mean, that's up to him.
Participate in family quarrels.
I'm not quarreling, Amy. I'm just picking at him. So,
in all fairness, if I was to look for another sponsor, I'd have to make an effort, and I really cannot be bothered having to make an effort again. So, if it's right with you guys, I'll stick with the one I've got.
I'll stick with the problem I have, right?
It's like getting remarried again. If anything happened myself and Louise and I started dating again, I'd have to make an effort. And I just really couldn't do that again. So
I want to get this quote in real quick. This is from some Indian guy, Bhagwan Sri Rashish, on the story, the Tower of the... I looked up how to pronounce that too. Only man is in suffering. Suffering exists nowhere else than in the heart of man. This is his comments on this Tower of the Spirit. The whole of nature's joyous. The whole of nature's always celebrating without any fear, without any anxiety. Existence goes on existing, but man is a problem. Why is this so? Why does every man have problems? If only a few were problems, we could call them ill, abnormal. But just the contrary is the case. Only a few are without problems. If only a few figure this out, most everyone is operating from an agenda, from fear, from being deliberate, intentional, all those things that this story is saying leaves us in a state that we could be attacked, leaves us in a state of not being protected. So, anything else before we close, guys? I think my favorite quote.
Have a good Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, and then next week, I really do. I want to go back and close with this quote that we talked before from Ron Hogan from 1967. If you want to get ahead, show people compassion. When other people attack you, defend yourself with compassion is the most powerful force in the universe. And Amy P., I think that's where you start with it, with what you're talking about. How do we see this? How do we make that shift? I think that's the way we make the shift. For me, it's in relationships or situations. It's okay. How can I show love in this situation? How can I, how can I, instead of acting on my fear, how can I show love? And if I start there, it can work itself out. It always makes it better, no matter what it is. Yeah, Marla, everyone have a great Christmas. Thank you. And then next week, I think we're going to talk about, I want everyone to bring their quotes that they have or look and find some about what the Tao would say about planning for the future or New Year's resolutions or those things, because there's a tendency to think that if you're following the Tao that you make no plans, that you're just, in the moment of whatever is, and you don't do those things. But my thinking is that you do make plans. You just lower your expectations of those plans. It's about expectations. But let's see what it says. Maybe, and if you find some that say, no, you shouldn't make any, bring those too. Well, y'all have a great Christmas, and we will see you next week.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.